My name is Reza, and I'm a senior advisor on quantum tech here at Mitacs. Honored to be your host for this webinar, and we are so glad you could join us today. Thank you so much for your time. Please add your questions in the chat box. We will do our best to get to all of them. If there are many questions, we will answer you later. We will save all those questions, I promise. So let's get to our topic of today, which is the National Quantum Strategy. I think we are all very excited to hear that is announced now. Well, it was, I believe, January 19 or not January 13, I think. It was a Friday. I remember I didn't have the chance to join personally, but now we can hear more about that great announcement. The National Quantum Strategy was announced at Perimeter Institute, which is located at the heart of basically Quantum Valley in Waterloo region. We are here to learn more about it from someone who can explain it very well, since he was involved in developing it from very, very early stage. Michael Rosenblatt. We are so fortunate to have him as our distinguished guest speaker today. Michael is the director of the Federal Science and Technology, policy director at the National Quantum Strategy, and also Science and Economic Development Canada, ICET. He will tell us more about his role and his what his office has been doing. Michael, would you please take it away?
Super. Thanks very much, Reza. Can you hear me okay? Is that everyone's good? Fantastic. Thank you, everyone. It's I'm Michael Rosenblatt, as Reza said, Director of the National Quantum Strategy Secretariat. I am so pleased to be here this afternoon to be able to talk to you about this exciting field in quantum. As Reza said, the minister had announced the National Quantum Strategy on Friday the 13th. In Waterloo, so we took that to be a good omen to get that strategy out. It is live on the NQS website, and we can maybe put the link in the chat after for folks, just in case you don't have that link well at hand, and so you'll be able to see the information. I'll be displaying a couple of slides in a minute as we go through, but primarily I'll be just discussing the national strategy. Before I dig into the details, maybe one thing I'd just like to point out is to give also a thanks to the National Quantum Strategy Secretariat. While I often appear at these types of meetings and events as sort of the face or the head of this, of course, there's a huge team behind me and across the government that's working. So I would just like to express my thanks to Desislav Sabev, Rajat Ghosh, Sean McGuinness, Michael Ho, Siobhan Bright, and of course our Assistant Deputy Minister, Nipin Vats, who likes to mention and these and other sorts of forums that he's a recovering physicist. So we're so pleased to have him at the top of the bureaucratic pyramid in terms of quantum, able to lend his technical expertise. I, of course, am not a technical expert. I usually joke that I'm sort of like the NASA administrator. I need to know how to talk to Congress, or in our case, to parliamentarians and to ministers to express this. But the folks on my team and Nipin are truly experts in the field. So if you have any specific quantum technological questions, or frankly, any difficult questions at all, I'll either refer them to John or I'll shout out the word entanglement and then feign some sort of connectivity issue to let others take those hard ones on. So in terms of the National Quantum Strategy itself, the first thing I'd like to start with is sort of say how we got here quickly, because certainly the road didn't start with the strategy. As a matter of fact, the government of Canada has made about $1 billion in investments in quantum over the last 10 years. They have created a number of clusters of strength from coast to coast. I've got a map behind me on my wall here, but I don't have it. Maybe for next time, I'll actually put the quantum ones. I'm sitting in my office here at home. Maybe I'll put the quantum. It actually looks better than the slide we have that lists the 4 quantum clusters coast to coast, of course, in British Columbia, in Calgary, and in Alberta, in Waterloo, Toronto, in Ontario, and of course in Sherbrooke, Vermont, in Quebec. So those are sort of our main clusters. But of course, there's activities going on all across the country, and it's quite exciting to do those strengths. So we've had those investments. They're what we call opportunistic. They have created and advanced those research clusters from coast to coast, but of course we didn't have a strategy until very recently. So to take back a little bit further, in Budget 21, the government decided they would invest $360 million over 7 years and also committed to create a national quantum strategy, which is the one we released on January the 13th. Two things about that. Number one, about the timeline. So it's over 7 years. This is to take into account the fact that quantum is an emerging technology, and it will take, it's got long timelines of development and so on. So this is to include a baseline or a standard investment over a fairly lengthy period of time. That's not always the case, but we thought that was the best approach given the technology's stage of maturity and where they're at. As well, in terms of the amount, one of the questions, of course, is how much should one spend in a national or other quantum strategy? Some other countries have invested what can only be described as jaw-dropping amounts of money into the quantum system. By comparison, the 360 million might look somewhat modest. As we go through the different technology areas in a second, I'll point out how this is just dedicated money, whereas in fact the government is actually investing quite a bit more through other programmatic vehicles that aren't included in the 360. There's sort of administrative reasons why it's couched this way, but as I say, there's quite a lot going on, and we're hoping that those investments will move us along. So after the Budget 21 announcement, we launched on a series of consultations, and I can't see all the participants on my list here, but perhaps many of you had participated in those consultations to develop the strategy. So those who did, thank you very much, as well who have submitted. We then tried to take your information into account in order to produce the strategy that was released last week. And so in the strategy itself, and I will just try and share my screen and present this right here. Here we go. And I will go into one of the downsides of doing it this way is I can't actually see the button because there's so many things, but maybe that will do. So basically in the strategy, you can see there are the three areas there: research, commercialization, and talent. You can see along the bar at the top, the 141 million for research, 169, and the other amount for 45 million for talent. The primarily research vehicles, so these are all existing vehicles. That was a choice we made because those of you who have been around a while will know that creating brand new programs takes a fair amount of effort and time. And we heard clearly from our consultations, time was of the essence. And so needed to move on that. That's why we chose this particular approach. And so the Alliance grants are new streams in quantum that were launched that you can see. The Quantum R&D Initiative, or QRDI, modeled after the Genomics R&D Initiative, or GRDI, is going to coordinate R&D across the Government of Canada. In the commercialization space, the NRC Challenge programs, Innovative Solutions Canada, which does the procurement side, the Global Innovation Clusters, and the Regional Development Agency. So all of these have been announced, although some of the specifics are still forthcoming. And then on the talent side, I'll leave that more to John to talk about, but we have the NSERC Create, and of course the Mitacs funding that's involved. Now, these are not sort of hermetically sealed boxes in terms of research commercialization. They do sort of blend together a little bit in terms of what actually is at what stage, but these are sort of generic boxes that we use to create them. And so then I'll go down to the next slide on this right there. Come on, there we go. And so under the strategy, we have three missions under the three missions. So basically, folks on the line are probably familiar with the five sort of quantum areas: hardware, software, communications, sensors, and materials. We have created specific missions in four of the areas. We've squished together hardware and software. You can see the mission there to make Canada a world leader in the development, deployment, and use of quantum computing hardware and software, and to the benefit of Canadian industry, governments, and citizens. In the networks or communication, ensure privacy and cybersecurity in a quantum-enabled world through a national secure quantum communications network and a post-quantum crypto initiative. And then last but not least, in the sensors area, to enable the Government of Canada and industries to be developers and early adopters of the technologies. So these missions somewhat reflect where we're at in terms of the development of different technologies. So then the point is that over time, these are the three sort of general missions or goals that the government is trying to achieve with the strategy. And so under the strategy, we also have three sort of pillars that we call, that you saw earlier on the slide before, in the research, talent, and commercialization. The two that weren't mentioned on the slide, or that were brought up by consultations, also under security and intellectual property. So we don't have separate missions on those, but those sort of underpin the activities that are there. So what I'd like to go on to now for a second is just move on to, so these are the specific missions. I'm happy to share this after. For a talk like this, I didn't want to get too far into the weeds of the individual missions, but maybe what I'll do is I'll stop the sharing with that. And so In terms of the research pillar that we have, this research again builds on those previous investments of the 4 centers that are created. You saw the programming there primarily through NSERC, and basically this builds on all of the great work that you have done. We have many world leaders in terms of quantum research, both in academia and with various different companies. We did recently a bibliometric study of the Canadian quantum industry, and what we found was many world-leading publications, a lot of collaboration going on, both within Canada and internationally. And I'm happy to share that paper. We don't sort of post it on the website, but I'm happy to share with anyone who is interested in those bibliometric results. Fairly recent. I think we finished it off last March, so it's pretty up to date. In terms of the commercialization sort of side of the house, we have roughly 100 organizations. So about 75, it's sort of hard to count these exactly, but we have around 75 companies, quantum companies in the ecosystem. They're leaders in many other fields. One of the initiatives we've got ongoing now, this is sort of one of the behind the scenes kind of activities. We're working with Statistics Canada in order to get us better information about the quantum industry and so on. And so quantum companies and quantum fields or choices will be added into Statistics Canada surveys. Anyone who's worked with Statistics Canada will be familiar with these are not short-term programs. Generally speaking, these take many years for the data and the results to appear for people to use. But anyway, long story short, we've added those into the mix, and so we should be seeing the results from that in a couple of years. That'll give us more of a base to work from in terms of the quantum industry, as well as with academia to find out more of what's going on. So as I said, there's huge opportunities on the commercial side. You may have seen the announcements recently with Xanadu working with Volkswagen. I think it's a $100 million investment. D-Wave and others making large international strides. And so one of the things to note on that, and this is where we'll come back to the funding for just a second, the $360 million is dedicated new money. So it's all, that was not pre-existing. This is all new money for organizations to do things in addition to what they were doing before. But that money does not include things like the Strategic Investment Fund or the SIF. Again, we had the $40 million SIF investment in Xanadu a week or so ago. All these things blend together when you're working on this, but fairly recently, a week or two ago. So that's not included in the 360. So if you add that in, we're already up to 400 million. It does not include the Canada Foundation for Innovation, or the CFI, who makes many investments in infrastructure. Does not include the Defense, DRDC, National Defense Program ideas. Nor does it include the BDC, or the Business Development Bank. I have to think of all the acronyms. I'm used to doing acronyms. I have to think of what the spelled out of them. The Business Development Bank of Canada, the Deep Tech Fund, who's made a couple of investments out of their $200 million fund. They've made some investments, I think, in Nordcontique, as well as in Xanadu. So that's not included in the amount as well. One of the things, sort of the advantages to a strategy, in addition to explaining to other countries and stakeholders sort of what we're doing on quantum, is it helps bring things together within the government. So we have a number of internal mechanisms that help coordinate these investments, as I mentioned, on SIF, on CFI, on BDC, as well as the Bank of Canada has a quantum program as well. And so we have a lot of coordination. I should also mention friends of the Security Establishment, the CSE, as well as CSIS, and a number of other departments and agencies, of course, the NRC and NSERC and others, to coordinate our efforts and to say, okay, we have these quantum funds, how can they work in support of the strategy? So even if they're not specifically, the reason they're not specifically announced in the strategy is simply because they're not receiving direct money in that, but quantum has been very successful over the years of securing funding from these and other funds, and we expect will continue to do so. So the actual amount is quite a bit greater than the 360 million. So maybe just to move now, so that's sort of the domestic scene. I'd just like to move to a second to the international scene. So one of the things we heard from our stakeholders was how important it was for Canada, the government of Canada, as well as firms, to get out there and show the flag, to describe to other countries all the great work and the opportunities we have in Canada. One thing I can tell you from my meetings with other countries, across the board, be it the UK, the US, France, Germany, etc., there is a great interest in working with Canadian companies and Canadian researchers. It is not a hard sell. So thank you to all. You've made my job in that world a whole lot easier. It's not something we have to push. In some technologies, we may have to push a little bit in order to get interest. I can guarantee you that is not an issue in quantum. Other countries, other organizations, very interested, very positive. They see us as a like-minded partner, fair, good to deal with. And so the interest is fantastic. Just last week, my colleagues and I were at San Francisco. We led a trade mission to the Photons West, Quantum West conference, huge conference, 20,000 people visiting, over 1,000 exhibitors. Mitacs was there represented as well. And so we made connections with the UK, with the Netherlands government, with the Dutch government. And so, huge opportunities there to talk, to wave the flag, to show Canada is out. John and I had gone to the UK back in November, meet with the UK government, as well as the Innovate UK and Quantum and others. One of the other business supports I didn't mention is through the NRC, National Research Council, and IRAP. IRAP had a joint UK call that we launched at the UK event as well for businesses. And I'd be remiss, of course, if I don't know, I think I meant to mention, but I know I did the NRC challenge programs, of course, in quantum computing, as well as in sensors and other areas, which are big supports of both business and the R&D side. So the other activities in terms of the international, and these aren't sort of, the reason I'm also mentioning these are not sort of specifically mentioned in the strategy itself, but they're ongoing work that we're coordinating. There are also what we call PDAs, or Partnership Development Activities, which are taken on by Global Players Canada, or GAC. We work closely with them to promote Canadian companies, Canadian research and interests abroad. Recently, there was a trip to Munich, Germany, which was organized by there, as well as the missions abroad. Also so basically what we're taking to all these things is a Team Canada approach, to show up with multiple departments and agencies to advance research and commercial opportunities wherever we can with these countries. As I say, we've had a fair amount of success doing so. A number of joint calls, for example, NSERC and the National Science Foundation, NSERC in the UK, all sorts of research and other collaborations, work on standards and so on. So there's an awful lot of international work sort of going on, perhaps behind the scenes, may not be as obvious to folks not involved with the missions. We will be looking to have those in the future, likely with a few European countries. Details to be worked out, but it's quite an exciting time to be able to showcase Canada's activities internationally. As an aside, I am also a big promoter that the quantum field is still emerging, and I don't think we have any clear countries or areas that are winners yet. So I am certainly not prepared to seed the field in any of the 5 quantum areas for Canadian researchers or companies. I think Canada can make a huge mark on the global stage. I think we can be global leaders. Is it likely we'll be global leaders in all 5 of the areas? Perhaps not, but at this stage, there's no point setting limits on what we can do. I think we can have a couple of major companies that play increasingly important roles in the global quantum ecosystem in all the areas. And so we're looking to support that. One of the things we heard loud and clear is, due to the stage of technology, we're not picking winners just yet. And so that's part of the strategy, which brings me nicely towards the end of my discussion, which is to say the next steps in terms of what we're going to do next. We launched the strategy. My team and I breathed a great sigh of relief. We took at least an hour or 2 off after getting that out the door, and then we're looking on to the next steps. So 2 important next steps. One is the Advisory Council. So at the January 13th event, the minister also announced Dr. Stephanie Simmons and Dr. Ray Laflamme as the co-chairs of the Advisory Council. They'll provide advice to the Government of Canada, and we're in the process of finalizing the selection of the other Advisory Council members. So that should come soon. We'll provide an announcement on those. And then the next step that will have more broad-based interactions from the community, and the folks on the call and others are welcome to participate, will be the road mapping. So for each of the 3 missions I briefly displayed on my slides, what we're going to be doing is road mapping exercises to say, okay, what do we need in order to achieve those missions? So it's one thing to set a mission or a goal in sensors and communications and hardware, say, okay, what do we need to do to achieve that? And some of the things that we need to do to achieve that will be, perhaps there's research that's needed. Okay, that could be funded through NSERC Alliance and or other mechanisms, perhaps CREATE or other activities. Do we need procurement? Okay, well, that would be Innovative Solutions Canada. And then for the ones, some have expressed some interest in other ones that aren't automatically covered, for example, access to quantum and other computers. And if that comes up through the road mapping, that would be something we would find a vehicle for in the future to say, okay, we need this is part of it. how would we get there? What would we do to achieve that goal? So we'll be launching those next month or so, when we'll have an open call for everyone to input into those, and we'll take it back and we'll do it in a participative manner in order to describe the next step. So that should really put some more meat on the bones. So the strategy is fairly high level. This will be more of the details for what exactly we need to do to achieve those. And then perhaps last but not least, I would put in a quick plug as well. The Secretariat, in combination with CSIS and the CSE, Canadian Security Establishment, we're having a workshop next week on security and quantum. So folks who are interested in that can message me. Anyone who's interested in joining, we have a mailing list for academics and companies in Canada about quantum. And if you just put your name in the chat, I'll be happy to have my assistant Siobhan put you onto our mailing list. So maybe with that, I'll say thank you very much, merci beaucoup, and turn it back to Reza, please.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Michael. Thank you so much. Great information, very helpful. And yeah, I'm personally so glad to see all these activities, especially on the international level. I was part of that mission to Germany. We prepared some materials for that, and the mission to UK, to San Francisco. I'm sure that will help the ecosystem a lot. I see lots of interest already, Michael, and I will save all those emails, and we can help, sending you those documents that Michael mentioned. Great. If you have any other questions for Michael, please put in the chat box. One thing I'm seeing right now from one of our attendees, Michael asked, the question is for the commercialization and R&D pillars. For clarity, what are the breakdowns of focus based upon technology readiness levels? Are certain lower TRL levels in R&D pillar, like TRL 1 to 6, while other levels designated for commercialization pillars? Can you see the question, Michael?
Not exactly, but I think I know what they're saying. Yeah, I mean, I think the question is basically, what's the TRL? Oh, am I muted? No. So what's the TRL level of the commercialization bill? I don't think we've conceived it in that way. In other words, as I say, it's a general bucket for commercialization rather than a specific definition of what specific activities would be in that. In terms of the specific activities that are supported, so my role in terms of the strategy is one of coordinator. So I don't run the NRC challenge programs, nor the clusters, nor the RDA funding activities. So I think that they would be the ones to answer the more specifics in terms of the what exact TRL level that they support. Was that, I think that was the question, right?
Yes, I think so. And for that, for the quantum, for the sensing challenge program, I believe they should contact Amy, right? And
yeah.
For the computation.
Yeah, we can provide contacts for those for folks after the fact. Sure, no problem.
Mm-hmm. Great. Thank you very much, Michael. And with that, I would like to introduce to you our next guest, our CEO, Dr. John Hepburn, who to be a physicist as well, and coming from academic background in physics, chemistry, and all those good stuff. Please take it away, John.
That's right. And like Nip and Vats, I'm a recovering chemical physicist. I always have to add the chemical in front. I was actually a faculty member for more than 3 decades, dividing my time between University of Waterloo chemistry and physics and UBC chemistry and physics and astronomy. So that I'm obviously thrilled at the support, the new support of the government in the quantum strategy. But I would want to highlight what Michael said about the support that's existed for decades for quantum science in the country. I was involved in setting up the Blusson Institute at UBC, which was generously supported through the CFREF fund. And I know colleagues at Waterloo and in Sherbrooke and Toronto and other places. Canada has tremendous strength in quantum science, tremendous academic strength, and a growing but still small quantum industry. And some of the leading researchers in the world are in this space in Canada. As with artificial intelligence, this is an area where we have no reason to hide our lamp under a barrel. in terms of our expertise, and we need to exploit the expertise to actually grow a quantum industry in Canada. That's the primary goal of what we do at Mitacs, and I know what ISET wants to do with the quantum strategy. So Reza, I'm going to rely on your technical expertise, although you are a theoretician, but we hope you can manipulate. Bingo, you got it. Okay, so let's flip forward. I've got a few slides to go through. I'll try and go through them quickly so there's time for questions. So Reza, why don't you advance 2 slides to the picture? Because this is nice. This was a happy day. We've been anticipating this announcement for some time. And of course, Mitacs is represented on the one side by our VP of National Partnerships, Joe, standing off to the left. But I'd like to point out the 2 people close to the right, Ray Laflamme, who is one of the world leaders in the theory of quantum information science. Steph Simmons, an experimentalist from Simon Fraser University. So Ray, of course, was the director of the Institute founding director of the Institute for Quantum Computing at University of Waterloo. He arrived, sadly, just after I left the physics department at University of Waterloo, but he's been a pillar of strength in the Canadian system. Steph at SFU, of course, is developing quantum devices for quantum computing. So good choice, I said, for those 2 as the co-chairs of the advisory panel, both incredibly strong scientists. Steph, of course, involved in company creation as well. Ray's also been involved in that sort of activity. So tremendous choice. Looking forward to the rest of the committee. Moving on to the next slide. Of course, we've been in this business at Mitacs really since the beginning. This is one of many examples of what we've already been doing before the quantum strategy begun. Of course, we support innovation in all sectors. And so we've been working with 1QBit since they were founded. And of course, Andrew Fersman will say spontaneously very nice things about Mitacs. We have played a role in talent, both in supporting the innovation and research activities at 1QBit, but we've supplied them with interns over the years. We've given them an award, which is well deserved. But the main thing at 1QBit is, in addition to us providing them with research talent and with linking to university research expertise at many universities, and you can see 3 of them, Waterloo, SFU, and UBC, but also Sherbrooke and other places. But the main thing is that 1/3 of their high-level PhD level technical workforce are former Mitacs interns. So we provide not only the research expertise, the linkages to the universities, but also the talent. We're in the talent formation and recruitment retention business. Next slide, please. This is standard when I give presentations. This is from our existing strategic plan. I just want to highlight, in case people don't understand what Mitacs does, and I'm going to go into a bit more detail about what we do, is our primary purpose is to empower Canadian innovation through partnerships. And I can't stress that enough. People confuse us with, and I know the cooperative education system at University of Waterloo very, very well, having spent 18 years there. We do provide students, we do provide interns, we do provide work integrated learning. That's not our primary purpose. Our primary purpose is to drive Canadian innovation. And obviously we do that through talent and partnerships. So next slide. These are our key strategic objectives in the same strategic plan that we have. Obviously, number 1 is the most important. We're in business to strengthen Canada's innovation ecosystem. We are absolutely not the only players in this field. There are many, many others that Michael was referring to, but our job is through talent to strengthen Canada's innovation ecosystem. We work across the entire continuum of innovation now. We can work with, low TR level research projects, all the way through to business strategy, commercialization strategy, providing business students, college students. We, of course, work with talent always, deploying bright minds for a better future. It's important that we always consider inclusivity. Diversity, EDI is a key component. When we talk about talent, we want inclusive talent. We want inclusive innovation. And then finally, of course, we hope to do this efficiently and with organizational excellence. Next slide. Now, why would the government of Canada turn to Mitacs We're independent. We're not a government agency. We're a not-for-profit. We're supported by all 10 provincial governments, plus Yukon Territory. But of course, our largest government supporter is ISED, the federal government through ISED. Well, we've been in this business for more than 2 decades. We have worked with thousands of companies across Canada and actually globally. We have international programs. You can see the 25 countries that we have agreements with. So we have very strong partnerships with the UK, with France, with Germany and other European countries, but also with other countries, Tunisia, Ukraine. We have 25 countries that we're currently working with. We have funded, you can see close to 20,000 projects since 2008, and of course, provided support for thousands of internships and companies. And so our current funding is very generous. The 40 million is added on to a $708 million contract we have from ISED. And of course, we get $50–60 million a year from provincial governments. And I'll stress, and I'll get into this, 40% of our funding comes directly from industry to provide funding for the partnership projects. Next slide. This illustrates the difference between what we do and sort of standard work integrated learning. We actually start with the needs of the companies. Our projects are all driven by non-academic organization need, typically industry, typically small and medium enterprises. But we also work with not-for-profits, with hospitals, with municipalities. So it's the organizations outside the university that define what the problem is. We have about 110 business development professionals, Reza being one of them, who actually work between the universities and industry to define how Mitacs can help by structuring a partnership that includes talent and connections to the university research strength that I referred to earlier. And so then we establish the partnership that Mitacs then funds. We believe that partnership drives innovation, talent drives innovation, that will lead to economic and social benefits for Canada. And so our support that Michael referred to, the $40 million, is to expand the work we're already doing in quantum over this year and the next 5 years. And so I'll get into exactly what that means. Next slide. This is what we do overall, quantum being currently a small part of this, but you can see that Mitacs has grown quite dramatically over the years, thanks to generous provincial and federal funding and generous industry support. We're going to try and stop doubling every 3 years because it's pretty exhausting. And also eventually the governments decide we've got more than enough money, but governments continue to be generous with us. And so you can see that really we've gone from just over 10,000 internships 2 years ago to just over 15,000 internships last year. Already we're at about 19,000 internships, and there's still a couple of months to go, and we usually have a lot of activity in February and March. We will deliver over 20,000 internships this year, and we'll probably keep growing, but a bit more modestly in years to come. So we know how to create these partnerships. We absolutely know how to do the job that the government has entrusted us with on the National Quantum Strategy. You can see overall, we've got about 360 people working for Mitacs, of which about a third of them, as I said, are these business development professionals, coast to coast, St. John's to Victoria, they're everywhere. And so chances are, if you need help from us, there's going to be a business development professional within an hour's drive of where you are, even if you're in the Yukon Territory. Next slide. These are our programs. And I'll just describe Accelerate briefly in the next slide, but we'll get to that. The Accelerate, Elevate, and Business Strategy internships. First of all, this is the continuum of innovation. Elevate is a high-level postdoc program. Accelerate is support for partnerships that include typically graduate students and postdoctoral fellows. So these are projects to drive innovation in industry. Business strategy internships are more the business students, marketing students, college students to advance innovation to the commercialization stage. We don't engage in commercialization at NSERC. Others do at Mitacs, sorry. Others do that better than we do, but we set the stage so that great ideas can hit the marketplace. Global Link, Michael referred to international connections. Global Link is our international student mobility, student and researcher mobility program. About 20% of our activity is Global Link. That's the 25 countries. This is a very strong part of the national strategy for us. About half of the activity that we're going to fund through the $40 million is actually researcher mobility. To build the international networks, to support international collaborations, including international corporate collaborations. And so this is a critical part of our activity under the National Quantum Strategy. Next slide. All right, how do we work? Well, we keep referring to internship units. And by the way, the number of times I've been asked whether we pay our interns, it's starting to really get to me. So we're going to change the name of internships to something better. Yes, we do pay our internships. We pay them very generously. And so an internship unit is typically a 4-month work project. I'll stress that the interns divide their time between the post-secondary institution and industry. So they don't leave the post-secondary and work in industry. They don't stay at the post-secondary and work for industry. We insist that they divide their time between the two places. We can start with small, let's say a startup company needs an intern, 2 interns, just a few units of internship, and then it grows. And we've done this with 1QBit. Okay, so we can structure multi-million-dollar cooperation agreements or $15,000 internships, single 4-month work projects. So we're very flexible in how we do things. We combine, and we've done this with companies, we combine business students with PhD level science students, with social science students. We work across all disciplines and at all levels of post-secondary education. So next slide. This is important. All of everything we do is in partnership, either with an international partner or a industry or non-academic organization partner. The deal is that the internships, typically $15,000 per 4 months, most of that going to pay the student or postdoc. 50% of the funding comes from government sources, that's Mitacs. 50% comes from the partner organization, typically industry. Next slide. I'll just briefly describe the one core program. This is 70% of our overall activity is Mitacs Accelerate. So first of all, an applied research collaboration is identified, typically by our business development professionals, and it's structured. So we make sure that the benefit to the company is very clear, the benefit to the student is clear, the benefit to the university researchers. It's got to be a partnership. The business development professionals help the company and the university researchers structure the application. And then once the application is ready, we don't have any deadlines. The application comes in, we pass it through proper peer review. So we review everything we do to make sure it's high quality and really does contribute to innovation. And then we make a funding decision, typically within weeks of receiving the application. The application can take time to develop, but typically within weeks of getting the application, if it's very, very complicated, in dollars, it may take a couple of months, but as quickly as we can, we review, we make a decision, and then we send out the money to support the students. We also support international collaborations. And so we've had instances of Canadian students working abroad in an international company or foreign students coming to Canada to work with a Canadian company. But we can also do through the Global Link program, researcher exchange. And that's bilateral. We accept students from overseas coming to Canada. Students from Canada can go overseas, students and postdocs. Next slide. We're embedded in the quantum ecosystem. We've been doing this, as I say, for a long time. And so this is just a few of the organizations that we work with. It's not an exhaustive list, but you can see we're associated with and generally have partnerships with all the academic organizations, the university-based organizations like Institut Quantique at Université de Sherbrooke. But we also work with the companies across the country. And we've placed interns, every company that's listed here. We've worked with them. I described 1QBit, but also D-Wave, Xanadu. We've placed interns and had collaborative research projects with all of these companies. Next slide. We, of course, we have to report to ISED how we're doing. So we survey our students and our companies. We have loads of metrics that we track. So some of the interesting metrics, 97%, virtually all of our Mitacs interns feel that they have benefited professionally from the internship. So we have a high level of satisfaction amongst our interns. The figure that catches everybody's attention, because it is an important one, is that we've compared with Stats Canada data, and we've done, like for like comparison. Students who do a Mitacs internship are 35% more likely than regular non-Mitacs students to stay in Canada for their initial job, and their initial job is in their field of expertise. The other ones, of course, are Accelerate interns often start their own companies, or positions within the company they work with are created for them. And the last figure, and this we hope to even do better on, but 45%, half the companies who participate in an Accelerate project say that the results have been or will be commercialized. And this, of course, makes us very happy, because that's our purpose. We want the research results to end up in the marketplace to benefit the company and Canada. Next slide. This is just what we've been doing. You can see since 2010, we've been working with these companies. We work with the quantum institutes. We've got global quantum partnerships. I was just on Monday talking with the French ambassador in Ottawa about how strengthening our partnership in general with France, but focusing on the quantum partnership. I'm a member of the strategic committee for the joint committee, the Canada-France Joint Committee. And quantum and AI are the two things we're going to focus attention on next year. Michael already referred to the UK effort that I was part of. So we're strengthening our international partnerships in support of Canadian quantum research and quantum commercialization and company, support and creation. Next slide. This is what we do. We really want to make sure that the talent that we need to advance, the talent and the ideas that we need to advance Canada's quantum industry are supported, and that they stay in Canada. That's, we get judged on only two key objectives by our ISED funders. Are we increasing innovation and prosperity, social well-being in Canada? And are we creating the talent workforce that Canada needs for innovation, prosperity, and social good? Those are the two things that we get judged on. And so they're very important to us. And so we also, through our international programs, of course, we want to recruit talent to Canada and build international networks for our companies and for our researchers. And so again, to strengthen the Canadian ecosystem. We also have educational effort. We have international roundtables that we've run on quantum research and quantum innovation. And so we have a spectrum of activities which are all focused. The talent is our central focus, but talent for innovation, not just talent for talent's sake. Next slide. Here's the quantum strategy from Mitacs' point of view. So we want to amplify the economic benefits of the substantial R&D investments that Canada has made and will continue to make. We do have a program to support startups. We can work with companies as soon as they incorporate, we can work with them. So we can work with startup companies working in university incubators. We have a program, which one of the things I was talking about with the French embassy was our Mitacs Entrepreneur International, which allows brand new startup companies and Canadian incubators to go abroad to explore foreign partnerships and foreign markets. And of course, we want to secure Canada's diverse talent needs. We all know there's a talent shortage. We can help with that. And so the bottom line is that we're building a pool of skilled quantum talent that meets the needs of industry. Our focus is always on industry in the quantum strategy. Next slide. And I think we're coming close to the end. Okay, I've already basically said, so next slide. Okay, this is the bottom line. What are we going to spend $40 million, generously provided by ISED, and also in partnership with provinces and industry? So it'll be much, much more than $40 million. It'll be more like $100 million of support for quantum. This is where we are. We provided 124 IUs. These are basically Accelerate IUs working with quantum industry. And we're promising and we're confident that we can grow this through the great work of people like Reza. We're going to grow this up to, at the end of our current contract, the $40 million contract, we'll be providing over 1,000 internship units per year. As I say, a lot of them will be international, but a lot of them will be also working with Canadian industry. So total internships we promised, about 5,200, and we're confident we can get to that. So next slide. Again, I think that we've covered this. I've already covered this. Access to talent, central. We provide direct support. By definition, the quantum industry in Canada is entirely SMEs. And in fact, most of the work we do at Mitacs is with SMEs. About 80% of the companies we deal with are SMEs. I'll focus on connections and collaborations. That's the purpose of our international programs. It's talent recruitment and creating connections and collaborations. And then we have an ecosystem approach. We're not just in the providing students for research projects business. We also work with companies. We have training for the students, professional training for the students. We have these international programs. And so really, we're in the business of strengthening the entire ecosystem in partnership with others. And I'll stress that we have a very strong partnership with the Mitac, with the NSERC now, get NSERC correct, with the NSERC Alliance program that's existed now for a couple of years. And so we work with NSERC, we work with NRC, we do work with the other players in the quantum ecosystem and more broadly. Next slide. So this is, again, raising awareness, education, innovative partnerships, and of course, the very important international component of what we're doing. Next slide. This I won't dwell on, but you can see that we have loads of success stories. We do help university researchers. We can work with international students. In fact, almost half the students we work with at the PhD and postdoc level are international students. That's won't surprise any of our university people. And of course, diversity is very important to us. And we work with entrepreneurs, including former Mitacs interns who established their own companies. Next slide. And I think we've got to come to the end, and we are. These are our partners. Mitacs, as I said, is a not-for-profit. Our members are the universities. We work with all the universities and, in fact, the colleges and polytechnics across the country. We have agreements, partnerships with the organizations at the bottom here and many others. And finally, next slide. I would be remiss if I didn't thank our funding partners. I already referred to them. We do work very closely with all the provinces. And of course, the government, through ISED, provides us with, just over 40% of our total funding. So these are our partners. And I think with that, I'll finish. And there's even a few minutes for questions. Thank you very much for your attention.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, John. Thank you. So much great materials. I know might be hard to absorb all of it, but the good news is we are going to share these presentations with audience after the call. And yeah, if you have any questions for John or for Michael, I think this is the good time. I see some questions already. One, I think, very important one from Shihan. He mentioned, for a PhD researcher, a postdoc with thinking to commercialize their quantum sensing idea into product, what would be your advice for them? What programs, perhaps, Michael, would you recommend, or maybe how Mitacs can help John? Researchers, postdocs, PhD students who are working on something related to quantum science and technology, and they're thinking about commercializing those ideas.
I'll start. First of all, we do work with exactly what you're talking about. So PhD students and faculty members who want to create a new company, as long as they're in a university incubator, we can work with them. But and actually more generally, as long as they're an incorporated company, so we can't work with a company pre-incorporation, that's outside our mandate. But if it's an incorporated company, we can work with them, even if there's just 2 of you in the company. We can provide interns, and we've done this. We've had examples of people who come to Canada as a Global Link exchange student, come back as a PhD student, get their PhD, start a company, and we've supported them at every stage. So yes, we can work with small companies. They have to be incorporated. That's the only requirement we have.
Thanks, John. Maybe to just to follow up on that, I was going to say almost exactly the same thing. So for the commercialization side, as far as I know, almost every federal program requires someone to be incorporated. But before that, what I would suggest is that basically at almost every Canadian university, there are a number of different profs who have already done the spin-off route and already gone through the commercialization. My advice would be they would be your first stop, because they're living it, they've done it, they've experienced it, and so I think they would be a fantastic resource. Once one decides to incorporate and go the route, there are a couple other federal programs. For example, the Industrial Research Assistance Program, or IRAP, through the NRC. They're all about commercialization. There's also the Lab to Market program as well for universities. So there are a couple of different programs that are available, but in general, on the commercial side, one has to be incorporated to take advantage of them. We'd also be remiss in saying there may also be provincial programs. Depending on where one's located, there may be supports in that sort of area as well.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Michael. And, a personal suggestion, you may want to take a look into great incubators, accelerators that we have here in Canada, especially Creative Destruction Lab on their quantum cohort. They are located in Toronto Rotman School of Business. That might be a great opportunity for people who are thinking about quantum entrepreneurship. I'm sure there are many others, Shihan, in that region, the Waterloo region. There's the Velocity and Communitech, who I'm sure they will be very glad to help you, at least on the advising side. Now, there's always the funding situation and dealing with VCs. That's a whole different story for another time. I'm sure I will have an event about that and how to raise funding, for physicists, let's say. How to talk to VCs, the valley of this, the valley of never being born, and all those good stuff. Thank you very much. I see Peter Knight on the audience. Sir Peter Knight said, "Great job, Michael and John. Looking forward to continuing with us in the UK." Yes,
I've known Peter for a long time, so I did see him in the UK. We got stuck in a very long taxi ride from Euston down to Trafalgar Square. So nice to hear from you, Peter, and we'll see you again, I hope.
Wonderful. I don't know if it is possible for you to unmute yourself, Peter, and tell us a little bit, maybe one line about UK, all the great quantum stuff that's happening there, the whole 4 different quantum hubs. I'm sure people would love to know more about those, and they like to know how to, expand these collaborations. There you are. Hello, sir.
Okay, I don't know if you can hear me now. That was a really good job. And, one of the things that we know is that talent and the transition from knowledge creation to wealth creation is not an easy journey. And I think what you're doing is really a terrific. I'm sure we're going to steal some of your ideas. Internships are wonderful ideas. Between the UK and Canada, we've tried a number of prototype experiments. For example, a wonderful one that I know of between a group in Bristol and a group in Waterloo, which is already paying off huge dividends. That kind of collaborative enterprise is something that we're really keen to see more of, working with Canadian companies, Canadian academics, and their counterparts in the UK. So honestly, you've beaten us, of course, because we're still waiting for ministerial approval on our quantum strategy, but you have already done something remarkable, and I've told our folks we should emulate you. So well done, and we're going to continue it. Okay. Now I'm going to mute myself because it's your show, not mine.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Peter. This is great, and there are lots of interest, and there are many organizations that I know of here very active in quantum side, and they love to do more collaboration with our partners in the UK. Of course, you are doing amazing science, doing great research in quantum. We hear great news almost every day coming from UK universities. Great. Thank you very much, Peter. I don't know if our audience have any more questions for us, or maybe John or Michael, do you want to say any final words about, how we can help the quantum ecosystem to grow in Canada?
Reza, I just noticed a question in the chat from Jen Turner, Canadian Heavy Oil Association.
Oh.
Why don't you send her the link? I don't know whether, I'm going to guess that they're in Alberta. Don't know, but send her the link to Eric.
Absolutely.
So
Also, I
that
put my
you can
email.
follow up.
Please, Jen, feel free to email us. I'd be more than happy to connect you with the right people.
Maybe one thing I'll just add, Reza, just and great to see you, Sir Peter, again for coming. Thank you for coming. One of the things that you had said to us when we were in the UK, which I think is useful for the group, and I'm paraphrasing you of course, is that one of the ways for the future is to focus on some use cases. To get it sort of out of the, quantum is scary and whatever, but rather than that, focus on here's what we can use it for, and here's what we can do. And this also applies to the person from the Heavy Oil Association as well, which is to say, where are the areas that we can really advance? How can it solve your problems? So you were asking, Reza, so what can we do for the industry? I think one of the things we can do is find where are the actual applications of quantum computers, sensors, etc. And by finding the applications, it's not only a push, then it becomes a pull. Because my view is that the people buying these things, when they're ready to be purchased, I don't think they really care if it's quantum or not particularly. I think they care, does it do what I want it to do better? Is this sensor better than the other ones I can buy? Does this quantum computer solve problems, or these algorithms solve problems I can't solve by other means, rather than it's an ion trap computer that does I don't think that's particularly what they're interested in. So one of the ways to help the industry in the future will be to move there, is to do these use cases, to demonstrate where it's useful, and then to roll it out, of course, and take advantage of it.
Wonderful. Exactly, Michael. Finding the right use cases, we hear so much about quantum computation these days, and also other areas, quantum sensing and communication. Finding those use cases, I think that's the key to find a bigger and bigger audience, and engage more perhaps well-established industries with deeper pockets to be involved in quantum industry. Great. Thank you.
I think, Reza, just a quick comment on the talent needs, and getting to related to what Michael just said. We do need to demystify quantum. I mean, one of the leading researchers in the world in Montreal, Gilles Brassard, is very proud of the fact that he's actually a computer scientist. And yet, the Bennett Brassard method is that's what he got the breakthrough prize for. So you don't need to be a quantum physicist to participate in the quantum innovation economy. And in fact, as the industry matures, we're going to need engineers, we're going to need, everybody, college students, everybody. So I think that's going to be one of the challenges, is making sure that people understand that the quantum technology is not some mysterious, horrible thing that you have to have a PhD in physics to understand.
Exactly. That education and raising awareness is part of, and one of the pillars of our quantum strategy, trying to educate, let's say, the industry, the end users, about those advantages of quantum technologies, especially when it comes to quantum computations. It's not exactly clear. I think those are very, very important at this very earliest stage to be done, to make sure that we are, building a sustainable quantum industry in Canada and globally. Thank you very much, John. And Alison from D-Wave asking or commenting, I'm not sure, use case focus will be critical, showing the art of the possible with today's technology will be important. Absolutely. Great, we are almost done at the end of the time. Carl, CTMI in Vermont, Quebec will need people in microfabrication for our new industry, lead quantum fab. We will need a great workforce for the future. Absolutely, we do. And it's not just quantum physicists, right? It's, people who are expert in nanofabrication, electrical engineering, creating, generating those very specific signals that we need for quantum computers, and all other areas. Great. Thanks, Carl. If you can send me an email, I'm happy to send that document that Michael mentioned. I have a copy of that. Many thanks. Thank you, Thane. And thank you very much, both. Okay, great. Thank you. Thanks, Michael. Thanks, John. Thanks, Peter.
Thanks, Reza, for the great job moderating and bringing this all together.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Have a wonderful day, guys, and we will see you soon again.
Yep. Bye now.